Hey guys, Collin here to recap Week 9 and also look at Week 10 for the best picks of the week. All right, looking back at Week 9, we did about as average as you could, going 2-2-1. However, the benefit is that we did go a plus 0.3 units on the week, so any improvement is good improvement. The first thing that we had was a win with the SMU Houston over 62.5. That hit in the third quarter, which was the easiest bet of the week, which if you're like me, you're hoping that you wish that they could play every week because that would make sports betting just so much easier. The first losses that we had were the UTEP game-related games. So UTEP FAU under 47.5 was a loss, and then the money line was a loss. Both were looking really good up until the end. I expected to lose the money line. That was the long shot of the week, but FAU held them down for a while, and then UTEP scored a meaningless touchdown at the end of the game to blow both bets. Sometimes you just get unlucky like that with sports betting, as we all know. Another win that we had was Colorado plus 26.5. I had that feeling that Colorado was going to be able to cover that spread. Oregon really wasn't too motivated to go and just put the beans to them. You can see them pulling up later on in the game, and Colorado was still trying to stick to the game also as well. The last one I had was a Florida State plus 10, which for me luckily was a push. For most of you probably was a loss at a plus 9.5. That's why it's important to get on these spreads early and to make sure that you're looking at ones that are easily trendable. And if you're like me and use a FanDuel account, you can buy them out and get the better spread usually before game time and get your money back. So with that being said, let's go into Week 10. So for Week 10, my first pick is Ohio State minus 14.5, which I see it as a minus 110, and that's versus Nebraska. Now, I'm a little nervous with it being a half a point over 14. However, Ohio State has been decimating non-ranked opponents. And Nebraska's team looks completely demoralized as they've lost all 6 of their losses are within 10 points. But Ohio State is a plus 41.6 point per game differential in games versus these unranked opponents, so that bodes well for this game as well. Over their last 3, they've also been more dominant comparatively to Nebraska. OSU averaged 535 yards per game, only allows 286, with a positive 35 point per game differential. Whereas Nebraska is a 402 yards per game with 403 yards allowed and a minus 5 point per game differential. So keeping that in mind, I think we can lock in minus 14.5. I could see that probably scooching up a little bit too. I wouldn't be too much more comfortable though with much more than that. Next game is Kansas State minus 24, which I see as a minus 110 versus Kansas. It's a rivalry game, so anything can happen, as we saw this week with Michigan State. And Kansas can really surprise people, as we saw with Oklahoma. But Kansas State, I think, just really matches up well in this game. Their offense will look better than it typically does due to a pretty much nation's worst Kansas defense. Kansas defense is ranked 127th or worse in points per game, points per play, third down conversion percentage, yards per play, rush yards per game, and red zone scoring percentage. Keep in mind that there's only 130 ranked teams nationally. Kansas State's offense ranks 66th in points per game and 91st in yards per game, so I think that's going to make them look a lot better as they're facing such a porous defense. And also, looking at the record, Kansas State dominates this rivalry, winning the last 12 matchups by an average of 26.9 points per game. And if you look at the last 3, it's a plus 23.7 points per game differential. All right, the third pick this week is going to be Baylor minus 6.5, which I see as a minus 109 versus TCU. Big storyline here is that Gary Patterson, TCU's longtime coach, is out after that loss to Kansas State, which can lead to some conflict in the locker room when it comes to ideology, morale, especially as he was a long-tenured coach. It wasn't like he was only a few years into the job, so his culture was pretty hard set. Now, looking more at the stat-based, Baylor is 3-0 against the spread in their last 3, and all by a healthy margin, by an average of 12.5 points over the spread. And TCU is 0-3 in their last 3, and they're minus 13.7 against the spread. I think Baylor's offense has been humming lately, putting up 38 points per game in the last 3, and facing one of the nation's worst defenses that's allowing the same amount of points per game over that time. They're 113th in points per game and 119th in yards per game and points per play. So I think you could really book Baylor here minus 6.5. They've really been doing well for us this year if you've been following all of our Baylor bets. All right, next one is Tulsa first half plus 13.5, which I'm seeing as a minus 114 odds versus Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati is one of the best teams in the nation, number 2 in the AP poll this week. However, in the last 2 games, they really haven't been impressive in the first half. They only led Navy by 3 points and Tulane by 2 points. And Tulsa has had an equal measure to be able to stick with opponents they were 4 down on USF and they were even versus Navy this past week. 13.5 seems like a lot for a first half spread, even for a team like Cincy. And I think that's because Tulsa has had experience playing against schemes that are similar to Fickle's Cincinnati with that game versus OSU earlier in the year. Keeping in mind that Fickle came from Ohio State before taking the Cincinnati job. They kept Ohio State only to a 7-point lead in the first half, so that also factors into this decision as well. Key first half point history to keep an eye on over the last 3. Cincinnati averages 20.7 points per game. Tulsa allows 13.3 points, which is a 7.4 point advantage for Cincinnati. And then Tulsa scores 12.3 points per game over the last 3, and Cincinnati allows 9.7, which is a positive 2.5 point advantage for Tulsa. So as I aggregated these and did some mental crunching, came out to a 7 to 10 point spread when accounting for strength of schedule and the power rankings for this game. So I think 13.5 should be a good number there. Next game is Liberty versus Ole Miss. I'm going to take the over 68.5, which I'm seeing right now as a minus 108. Combined for both teams for the over-under, we're looking at a 6-10-1 over and under spread. However, the average score between the two teams over the last 3 makes up for this. Liberty averages 41.7 points per game, and Mississippi has averaged 27.3, which equals, if the math was to work out perfectly, it would be 69.03 points combined over the last 3 games. Both offenses rank in the top 20 in points per game and average over 400 yards per game, and I think the defenses look suspect in this. Ole Miss allows 30.3 points per game and over 430 yards per game, but that's also facing some of the best offenses in the nation and the SEC. And Liberty looks stronger on paper. They're top 20 in points per game, yards per game, points per play, yards per play. However, they're averaging an opponent average rank of 99.5 compared to Ole Miss's number 8 predictive rank. So I think that defense is going to be exposed as phony this week versus a really tough Ole Miss team. So I think this will come down to 2 of the best quarterbacks in the country, which is Willis and Corral, balling out and trying to will their team to the victory. The big question mark here will be, how is Corral's ankle after last week's game? This is the same ankle that he injured early on in the season. So I would imagine that they're going to reduce his movement, keep him to the pocket. So that could be something that we keep our eyes on and maybe adjust this bet depending on how the line goes. So let's keep an eye on this. I'll follow up with this one later on in the week. And the last bet of the week is my long shot of the week. Okay, keep in mind, this is a long shot, folks. This is the Navy money line, plus 900 versus Notre Dame. I know I'm probably crazy, but they're a troublesome team to play at any point in the season with being a spread offense, or the option offense. And the team is playing with a confidence that could really spell trouble for Notre Dame. They took Cincinnati to the end of the game when they played earlier in the season, and Cincinnati was in South Bend as well. And I think that might bode well. I don't know. I have a good feeling about it. I'm impressed by the way that Navy controls the game and frustrates opposing team with their ball control. Like we discussed in last week's video, they average over 70% of time of possession, which is number 1 in the nation. And I think it keeps the defense on their heels and it keeps the opposing offense out of rhythm. And it really reduces the total number of possessions for each team, which puts a lot of focus on making the most of each possession, which I don't know if Notre Dame can do in this game. I say all of this to say that there's a reason that Navy's a massive underdog. Okay, plus 900 is huge. I think that you should bet appropriately on this. I'm not saying put multiple units on this. This game has a potential to be a blowout for Notre Dame, but what fun is college football if you don't bet for the underdog? At least once in a while, and bet responsibly for the underdog, or root for the underdog if nothing less. So I know I'm going to put just a little bit of money on this just for a big gain. You never want to miss. You never want to be that person that says shoulda, woulda, coulda. And I think that this one, out of all the major underdogs, this one has the best chance, especially looking at recent performance. So, All right, guys. Well, it's been fun. This has been good. Let's take a look at these bets this weekend. Hopefully, we're going to win some more money and do better than we did last week. Hopefully, we replicate the success that we had 2 weeks ago with a 4-1 record. Hopefully, with just a little bit better even from there. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, follow me on Twitter at ChopTheChalk, and we'll be able to talk through things as the week goes and talk through daily picks as well. All right. Take care, everybody.